Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Muchi Veda Vibhagine Vyomavta Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sarva Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Pranatosh Maham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome. We begin with our Drsya from where we stopped last time. And we have seen at the end, at the very end of the chapter 19, commentaries from Swamiji, that the self is that force factor, so to speak, that is always present, permeating, and all of our experience. And then again, we had the example of the light. The light is there, making it possible for us to experience this world of duality. So we have another example that was long before elaborated between Ramji and one of his students at the time. There was like, gravity is a common factor, conditioning the human experience on the planet here, and but somehow we never consider, we never take into account gravity. You remember that one, Lynn? Yeah. So we have this example to describe that there is something that is so easy to miss out, but it's always present. And then just to make the link between last class and this one, while I'm experienced, so I'm experiencing the object and I'm experiencing consciousness, I experience light and the object. So I'm experiencing Brahman. Brahman is experienced now in the objective way, considering that there are two levels of experience, and confusion, subjective. Okay, good that you did not break it completely. So good that it did not break, otherwise I have to ask help to connect the pieces together later on. I changed my provider because I forgot that this provider is weak today, my main one. So I was saying that there is consciousness is there permeating our very experience. So it says that I experience Brahman along with the experience I have of the world. So it is an interesting statement. I'm experiencing Brahman, God, Nirguna Ishvara and Saguna Ishvara with my experience of the world. So in which way we experience Brahman, Ishvara 2 and Ishvara 1, Saguna Ishvara and Nirguna Ishvara, in which way I experience Ishvara when I experience the world? So can any of you explain that for us? Because here it says that Brahman is always experienced. So, but how so? Can you say something, Claudio, Mark, or Lynn?
I think that we can experience the Saguna Brahman with the body-mind complex, and then the Nirguna Brahman. I think it's correct what I say. And because consciousness and existence is always available. It's not so that normally we dismiss the light. We always say, that we dismiss the light, but we dismiss consciousness, we dismiss existence, but it's always directly, it's always in my direct experience. even if it's not an object. No?
Yeah. Anybody else?
More or less.
Anybody else who would like to elaborate?
Nirguna Brahma, we experience as our very nature. So we're always experiencing because we are it. So we experience it as our nature. There's the consciousness shining in our intelligence. And Saguna Brahma, like Claudio says, we experience it in everything we see. And in every sensory perception, in everything we experience it. The manifestation.
Yeah.
In all our perceptions.
And we experience, in which way we experience the manifestation as Brahman?
We experience it as thoughts in our mind.
Yeah, we experience as the existence of Nitya, the existence of the universe, the existence of Jagat. So we experience Brahman objectively interacting with the world because we experience the existence of the world, and then we experience Brahman because there is only one existence of non-dual nature, which is synonymous of consciousness. And we experience also Brahman as the light of the illuminator reflected in our intellect, in our mind, reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa, as we see in the Panchadas. So we experience Brahman as we experience the world, because we see the existence of the world, which is a proof of the presence of Brahman, and we experience as the reflected consciousness in the body mind, as Claude said, that is the illuminator. Okay, it is possible due to the presence of original consciousness. Consciousness is responsible for knowingness, for knowledge. We know what we know by consciousness. We can only know what we know and know what we don't know by the grace of consciousness. Anything that we know or we do not know, we need to be thankful to Brahman, consciousness. So we experience our knowledge, our ignorance, and we experience the physical material world, all by the grace of Brahman. Okay, so objectively and subjectively. Anything else? Okay. So it needs to be something, it needs to become something very practical in the sense that we know that Brahman is conscious existence of limitless nature. So we must, on the practical level, understand that we are experiencing knowingness, we experience knowledge, we experience consciousness, which consists of the cognitive function of perceiving and knowing the world. So since that chit, that reflected chit, that reflect knowingness is an aspect of Brahman, so I am experiencing Brahman with the experience of the world. In fact, the experience of Brahman is always there. The world comes, the world goes in deep sleep or in Vikalpa Samadhi, and Brahman remains there. We always experience the consciousness by which we exist, without which we cannot exist as a body-mind complex. Now, so we need to integrate that in our day-to-day experience of life, remembering that I'm experiencing Chit, the knowingness aspect of Brahman, and I am experiencing this body and all other names and forms, which is the Sat, the existence of Brahman, which was transferred or given or considered to this superimposition of names and forms. So we experience Brahman 24/7, and we need to somehow make it also a sadhana, not only an academic understanding. You understand? And then in that passage, he mentions something from Shankaracharya, and I asked Lynn to send me that, and it says, he holds manifestations which are themselves nothing but the reality, the Sat, that what is appear as the objects of the world. He who imparts to those who have surrendered to him direct enlightenment through the Vedic commandment, you are that self, and after the direct experience of which there is no more any return to the ocean of world experience, referring to the ocean of samsara, of ignorance. To him, the divine teacher, Sri Dakshinamurti, is this prostration. So it's a very beautiful verse, or I don't know if that is a verse, but it sounds like. He holds manifestations which are themselves nothing but the Sat aspect of himself, of itself, of Brahman. It is the Sat aspect. And it appears as infinite numbers of objects. And this Brahman imparts to those objects called the Jivatmas who have surrendered to him. Surrendered to him here means who have really considered that there is a higher principle called Ishvara and an even more fundamental principle called Brahman, and have surrendered our arrogance or our ignorance to this knowledge, which is imparted by the Vedic teachings of commandment that ends as you are that consciousness. And after this direct knowledge, and here it's nice because it's experience, and after this direct experience, there is no return to the ocean of samsara, which means to say you never fall for the ignorance that kept you chasing objects in samsara as a means to resolve the human condition, okay? So he imparts to those people dedicated to this knowledge revealed by Brahman, by the grace of Ishvara, and which is the Vedic teachings, culminating with you are that Brahman. And after that direct experience, there is no going back to the ocean of samsara. To him, to this Brahman, the divine teacher, Shribam, is this prostration. So very, very beautiful. And then there is another one, him. The Lin sent me two versions. To him holds luminosity alone. So now it's presenting Brahman as the light of consciousness, not as the Sat aspect, but the Chit aspect. To him holds luminosity alone, that which illumines and reveals the world, which is of the nature of existence as well, shines forth entering the objective world, which is like unto the non-existent, which is like unto the non-existent. To him who instructs those who resort to him through the Vedic text, you are that. To him, by realizing whom there will be no, by realizing whom there will be no return to the ocean of transmigration. To him, of the form of the preceptor, the blessed Dakshinamurti, may this obeisance be. So the same concept translated in a slightly different way. Any commentaries, any insights, any contributions?
I would love it sometime when we're finished with everything else, with this and the Panchadasa, we could go through this Dakshinamurti Srotam. I think it's so beautiful. It's like a Nididhyasana.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I have some other ideas as well once we are done, because the Panchadasa will take a long time. And when we end the Drsya, which is the shorter one, Silvia has given me the idea of just doing Panchadasa twice a week, but we could otherwise do something else on Thursdays. But we think about that when it comes. Okay. And then we have Swamiji talk about the existence of the clip. When we say the clip exists, now I'm referring to existence itself, because as we know, existence does not belong to any object, belongs to Brahman. So I'm experiencing isness in the name and form of a clip, for example. So when the hand was perceived, so light was also present, but very often discounted, as we say. When the hand is removed, the imperceptible light continues and the light does not move, which is another aspect of Brahman, okay? It does not move, it does not change, it's not a karta, and it's not a doer and an enjoyer. When the hand is removed, the light continues. Similarly, existence is experienceable when the clip is. The non-experienceable existence continues when the clip is removed. So there is no clip, but existence remains untouched by the presence or the absence of the clip. Even when it's said that nothing exists, nothing is there, the existence of nothing is referred to because that existence is experienced. So when we say nothing exists, nothing, we see that the word exists is there, okay? So if there is an experience of known experience, the word experience is there. Experience of what? Of the absence of somehow visible or tangible object. So you cannot escape existence, and we cannot escape experience in one level or one level or another in terms of duality. There is always an experience of emptiness, nothingness, or presence of object. So what it means is that other than isness, no Namarupa is present. So Namarupa is fundamentally Brahman, is the Sat aspect of Brahman, the existence of Brahman that transfer or concedes existence to all names and forms. In Taittiriya Upanishad, one of the meditations prescribed is meditation on space. Space is something that's taken for granted all the time because it's too subtle. So maybe that's a good tool for you, Claudio. You teach meditation, so you can take your students on a higher level and say, okay, now we're gonna meditate on space. But then they have to understand that meditation there means contemplation of the nature of space, which is a little bit difficult if we don't have a ground, a base of Vedantic knowledge to help us to contemplate on space. But sometimes intuitively people learn, they get some knowledge by doing this sort of contemplation. Practicing meditation on space sensitizes the mind to appreciate pure existence, pure isness. So again, so it's going to make the mind sensible, more sensitive, more subtle. It's going to sense what space is. Okay, so space cannot be really experienced much by the sense organs, and it's even hard to know it or to experience it intellectually. Okay, but if the mind is subtle, sensible enough, it could help in further producing more refinement or development of subtleties, qualities, mental qualities. By Shravanam and Manana, I will understand the difference between existence and the object. So we listen to the teachings and we contemplate, and then we discriminate the world from the light, the existence of the world from existence itself. I have to separate existence from the object, not physically, but intellectually, cognitively. I have to understand the difference. between the two, the objects and the existence of Brahman. I have to separate existence from the objects, not physically, but cognitive understanding. I should know that existence is Brahman, and the objects are just Namarupas. Vedanta deals with only Atma, Anatma, and the difference between them. The more I listen to this subject matter, meaning to say the teachings of the Upanishads, the more sensitized my mind gets and begins to appreciate this subtle difference, okay? Difference between what? Between space and consciousness, between the world and Brahman, okay? Between consciousness and the intellect, and so on. Clarity improves with repeated listening and reflection. After sorting out this difference, it's known that the changes belong to Namarupa and not to the pure existence, not to Brahman, not to consciousness. When the hand is moved, only the hand moves, the light does not move. But the light seems to move, but the all-pervading light does not move at all. So this is a very nice analogy. You know, the world of objects move around, and we see that, okay, so you need to see the world, you need to see Brahman in the world. And then we go there and say, okay, so the world is moving, and then existence is moving. And then mean to say, existence moves, Brahman moves. They say, no, Brahman does not move. And we have to understand this subtle discrimination, okay? This all-pervading existence does not move. The all-pervading consciousness does not move either. It only manifests in new locations. If the hand moves, it reflects the objects or reveals the objects on different locations as far as Mithya is concerned, okay? Similarly, the pure existence, Brahman, is everywhere. What is God? What is God? That isness, which is called Sat, and internally, which is called Chit, and which is a source of Ananda, that Sat Chit Ananda is God. Okay. Do we have any doubt about this last paragraph? Any contribution?
Arlindo, I don't understand what it means when you say what is God, what is God. But I don't understand what it means with this. What is God. What is God. Okay. Okay, maybe I get it.
It's
what
existence. Existence.
Existence is God. Okay.
The existence
what is God? Okay.
Is God. And he's referring to Brahman, more specifically.
To Brahman, to exist. Okay.
The Sat aspect. So everything that is, is Brahman, superimposed by names and forms, appearing as the universe of objects. So let's move to the verse 20. Every entity has 5 aspects. Every entity has 5 aspects. It is, it shines, it is dear. Now it is, it shines, it is dear, its name, and it is in its form. So the first 3 belong to reality, and the later 2 to the world. Okay. So this verse is referring to 5 aspects that we all experience as we experience the world, okay? We experience the existence of the world. We experience the consciousness that shines and reveals the world. And we experience likes and dislikes. We'll talk about human experience. So it's dear okay? Because when we come to experience the world, we experience the isness of the world, which is the same as Brahman. We experience that it shines as Chit, as consciousness, which illumines the world. And we experience what? We experience likes. And like in this deer, likes, it includes also the dislikes, because dislikes is again a way, a negative or positive liking. So I dislike something, and then I would like to remove that thing from my day-to-day experience. We know that's not possible, but here is a description of our experience, okay? So there are 5 aspects within our experience. The isness, Sat, it shines as Chit, and it produces the likes and dislikes, and the objects are there and names with a name and a form, okay? The first 3 belong to reality, okay? It shines, and it's dear, okay? So this dear, it's dear here, it's an interesting thing, because although this satisfaction, dear here is a sense of satisfaction, okay, of ananda, yeah? Experiential satisfaction, peace, yeah? Fulfillment. So this 3rd aspect here, it is dear. It comes from what? It comes from the full nature of Brahman. There is 3 natures of Brahman. One nature is that it exists and concedes existence to the world. The other is that it shines as knowingness, as knowledge, as consciousness. And then it shines as well with satisfaction, because when we interact with the world, here and there we experience not only the Sat nature of Brahman, the Chit nature of Brahman, but here and there we experience the Ananda nature of Brahman. And we do so in 2 ways. Either when we get what we want, our likes are met, or our dislikes are removed, okay? Or when we have the knowledge in respect to our true nature, and then the mind is experience a certain Ananda, without having to go for or run from certain prabhada karmas or objects of experience, okay? So it refers to that. That's why it says that these 3 refers to Brahman. It is the isness, Sat, it is the consciousness that shines and illumines, and it shines also as a satisfaction of peace, Ananda. Every time, I mean, generally speaking, we have this life to experience Ananda, and everybody works 24/7 to experience happiness, satisfaction, peace. And we can do that only when the mind is in a certain state. When the mind is in a certain state, and then the Jiva Atma, the experience entity, is experiencing Sat, Chit, and Ananda, because the mind now is a good reflector of its true nature, the nature of Brahman, which is Sat, Chit, Ananda. And then the individual have what? Have a good experience of the world. But 99.999 of the Jiva Atmas experience Ananda here and there. Why? Because they don't have the knowledge, the Upanishadic knowledge, and because they rely on the law of attraction, of getting what they want and avoiding what they do not want, to experience some Ananda, and then it's tough, and then there is a lot of frustration, and there is a lot of what we call samsara experience, So the first 3, therefore, belongs to Brahman, reality, and the later 2 to the world. Okay, so let's see the unfoldment of this verse here by Swami. It says that what was covered in the past verse was further clarified here. It was said that through inquiry, the seeker differentiates between what is Brahman and what is the world, the creation. The differentiation is an intellectual process because they can never be separate. So this is another point to be understood, okay? There are 2 orders of reality. We see the only non-dual order called Satya. So in Satya, there is a projection, a superimposition of duality, of mithya. Okay, so we need to discriminate mithya, okay, from Satya. But from the standpoint of our human experience, they can never be separated literally, okay? We will experience the world together with Brahman. We experience Brahman even if the world is not there, once we have this clear understanding. And then it's better to go for the experience of Brahman, knowledge of Brahman, because then you have the knowledge of your fullness, regardless of the presence or the absence of the world, of the objects, of the creation. Therefore, they can never be separated literally. The objects can be physically separated from each other because they are limited. So they are limited by their forms. The forms, every object, it's limited by the property, by their forms, and then we give them names to distinguish them from other objects. Although some names, sometimes they are used for several objects or several situations, let's say. But Brahman, being limitless, cannot be separated from the objects. Objects can be separated physically, but Brahman is the substratum, okay? It's limitless, is the sustainer of all objects. It pervades all objects. Therefore, it cannot be separated literally. Existence and consciousness, being all pervaded, can never be separated from the world. Only this intellectual understanding, discrimination, separation is possible. And actually, intellectual separation alone is not only enough, but he already said here it's possible. So to try to really separate Brahman from matter, it's the spirit from matter, Brahman from the world, it's an impossible task, it's possible mission. And you don't need to do that. Why? Because it's impossible. And second, because it's not necessary for moksha. But unfortunately, or fortunately, who knows, the yogs, they want to separate Brahman from the world through certain states of human consciousness, some sort of samadhi in which they remove the world and then they say, okay, the absence of the world is synonymous with Brahman. Now I am experiencing the absence of the world, and that is an experience of Brahman. So I know how to separate Brahman from the world, but that is a misconception. At the subjective level, I cannot literally separate consciousness from the three bodies, for example, 5 sheets, on the subjective level. So I have consciousness. Before we are talking about the existence of the world and the existence itself that cannot be separated subjectively. I cannot discriminate or separate literally, physically, consciousness from my 3 bodies or my 5 sheets. In the awakened state, the gross body continues. In the dream state, the dream body continues. In the deep sleep state, even in the samadhi, there is the causal body there represented as the prana jiva. So continues. So I'm never going to experience pure consciousness, but it's only in terms of discriminative understanding that the differentiation is done. How is the discrimination done? So this is a very nice, important statement here. I'm never going to experience pure consciousness, okay, as an experience of consciousness without experiencing the world, okay? There is no such a thing as experience consciousness separate from the world, okay? So I can only, but it's only in terms of discriminative understanding that I can know consciousness for what it is. The light of consciousness of the existence that concedes existence to all of us and everything, okay? And then we understood. So I am experiencing conscious existence of limitless nature all the time. So I can do that only in my understanding, okay? So how is that discrimination done? is the purpose of Vedanta. The author here presents the method of discrimination in this verse. We experience 5 factors outside. All our experience have 5 components. So we are talking in terms of experiencing. 3 of those components belong to Brahman, and 2 belong to the manifestation or creation. There are factual, and 3 are factual, and 2 are material. Thus, all of our experience are mixed. The 5 components are existence. The words like is, am, are refer to existence. I never experienced anything as non-existent. Even when I say, okay, no, I have a nice state of consciousness, and then I experience non-existence. So experience non-existence is referred as to nothing was experienced, or nothing is experienced, nothing exists. So nothing exists, including the existence of the absence of existence. You cannot escape existence, as we know. So existence is otherwise known as such in Vedanta. It's common to all experience, but it's often taken for granted. Vedanta is not helping me to experience the existence because it is always experienced. How intriguing. So with Vedanta, I'm going to learn some things and then I'm going to begin experiencing existence. No, I'm going to realize that it has always been experienced, but I was not aware of it. I did not know that. There was some ignorance preventing me from knowing that I was experiencing the isness of Brahman. Vedanta is not helping me. Vedanta's aim is only drawing my attention to the already experienced fact and giving some additional information about that fact. Okay, so you have to come to realize, to integrate this ever-present factor as the existence and the light of consciousness. And you do that knowing that it has been always within your experience, okay? But then what happens? It remains too vague, too abstract. And then Vedanta is going to provide us with teaching, with more information about a fact which is common to all experience in the planet. All human beings are having this experience, okay? And it is a fact. So everybody is experiencing the Sat nature of Brahman and the Chit nature of Brahman, which is the very nature of the experiencing entity. But although it's a fact, although it's said to someone like, no, you are all the time experience Brahman and you are that Brahman. No? So people are not going to accept that, so easily. They will resist unless there is quite often a lot of additional information or teaching to support that declaration, okay? So the other aspect is bhakti. It's known to me. It is, and it's known or experienced. Everything that experience is known. So when we experience the world, we cannot separate an experience from the knowledge of the world, okay? So you cannot have an experience without having, okay, we can say, no, the ants, they experience the world, but they don't know. Yes, but here we are talking about Jivatma, okay? So which is present in the human jivas. The human jivas, we have this reflect consciousness, this Atma reflection, which comes with I am and I know that I am. Okay, so it refers to the human jiva. Yeah? So we cannot experience the world without knowing the world. Even if we know nothing about the world, we say, oh, I'm experiencing a world here that I know nothing about. Okay, but there is a certain knowledge. That's why it's so important to understand that knowledge is there regardless, regardless of what I know and what I do not know. Knowledge is before and beyond my little knowledge of phenomena and my huge ignorance about all phenomena present in nature. So, okay, everything that is experienced is known. It is known because if it's not known, I will never say, oh, it exists. Oh, look at this. This is it. This exists. So it's by the blessings or the grace of Chit, the conscious knowing aspect of Brahman. The very talk about existence presupposes experience. Okay, so again, we need to integrate this understanding in a way that it leaks into our day-to-day experience of life, okay? So we know the world, even if we know that we know almost nothing, especially nowadays, we realize more and more that what we know is subject to revision because there has been so much misinformation over the centuries, So we know, but I know what I know, but actually I don't know much of anything, okay? So, and then in which way this knowledge is there in a full, whole, and complete nature if it cannot know what is behind the curtains, for example, or what is behind the science that Ishwara knows so well, you understand? So in which way this knowingness is whole, full, and complete if it knows so little when it comes to be a Jiva Atma? So there are two principles. One is this Chit, this knowingness, this reflect consciousness by which we can know what we know and we can know what we do not know. And the wise person says, I know very little, okay? And what the little I know is subject to revision again and again. Okay, but I know the knowingness by which I know that I don't know. You understand? I know the knowingness, the consciousness. Oh, how you know a consciousness? Oh, the Upanishads, Vedanta, just brought to my attention the consciousness is here, shining in my intellect. And then I know that I am ignorant and in which way I'm going to experience my fullness. Not as the one who knows or the one has ignorance, as the consciousness that shines as human knowingness, which is very limited in which it cannot. Now, I am whole, full, and complete as consciousness. I can never be whole, full, and complete by what I know, because what I know is so limited and always subject to error. So this is an important point. And it's there in our moment-to-moment, day-to-day experience, so we should not get confused about that. So nobody can talk about my experience without knowledge. For example, if I say that I do not know Chinese language, the fact that I do not know Chinese language is known to me. There is knowingness there. Knowledge is there. Consciousness is there. So I am that consciousness by which I know that I don't know Chinese language. And I don't know almost all languages. And I don't know what's going on in science and in many other areas of our human experience. So we are talking about that knowingness, that knows I do not know Chinese language. Everything is known to me as known or unknown. And unknown is a very interesting word because within unknown there is a word known. I know that I do not know. Everything I know to me is known or unknown. Known refers to knowledge of a known entity, an unknown or an unknown entity. Knowledge is associated with consciousness, okay? Okay, either I know or I do not know. We are all the time talking about this knowledge, this consciousness, this knowingness, which is always associated with consciousness. So what is the relationship between consciousness and knowingness. Who could explain that a little bit, trying to make a stretch to understand in which way consciousness and knowledge, knowingness, associate. So as we know, Ishvara is all-knowing, okay? But we cannot really experience Ishvara's all-knowing power. So, and we hear the scriptures say that Ishvara is not a doer, a bhokta, a karta. It's not moved by karma, by desire, by actions, okay? Ishvara, as we know, is pure knowledge, okay? Pure knowledge. What is the difference between consciousness and pure knowledge? What is the difference between consciousness, pure consciousness, and the knowledge that we humans experience, okay? The ability to know the world, because we cannot experience the world without knowing the world, even if we don't have any idea of what we experience, yet there is a knowledge that, oh my God, I like it, but I have no clue what I'm doing here and what I'm really experiencing, for example. No? So what is the association? What is the relationship between knowledge and consciousness? That's the question for us to inquire. So we know that consciousness is not an experiencing, knowing entity. Consciousness is not an experiencing, knowing entity. So consciousness is not an experiencing, knowing entity. We know that Ishvara is pure knowledge, but it's not an experiencing, knowing entity, okay? Although we say that Ishvara, being pure sattva, it knows everything about Mithya, about Jagata, but it's not necessarily experiencing it in duality, or it could be said that experience the world as its full macrocosmic body of pure knowledge manifests as Jagata, okay? So Ishvara also does not have this problem about duality, about knowledge and ignorance. When we say that knowledge is associated with consciousness, we say that consciousness is not an experiencing knowing entity. Ishvara is not really an experiencing knowing entity. The Jiva Atma was designed to be the experiencing knowing entity. This knowledge reflects, represents, or refers to the reflect consciousness which occurs in the Jiva Atma, okay, allowing us to know and experience the world, experience and know the world. We experience and know the world, okay? So this knowledge is associated with consciousness, and this has to be brought into our practical day-to-day experience of life, because everything we experience and we know, we experience this knowingness, okay, by which I know what I know and I know my ignorance, but there is a knowingness there, okay? So this knowledge is associated with consciousness the same way a ray of light reflects in a mirror is associated with original light, okay? So there is original consciousness and reflected consciousness. The reflect consciousness is the one who is experiencing knowledge, okay? Knowledge has to be all the time related to what? An object of knowledge. But then what is the purpose of this creation? Is for us to experience in duality an object or many objects of knowledge until we somehow we stumble in the scriptures, and then we no longer are fascinated with experiencing an object of knowledge or knowing an object of knowledge, but we want to know the knower. we want to know the know. And then we begin meditating and doing some practice, some sadhanas. So I want to know the creator, and then I want to know something, other than the creator, the source of the creator, the source of the universe, and so on. And then we go back, trying to do this very, very inner, subtle inquiry. And then we come down to what? We come down to our very nature as what? As knowledge. That by which I know. Okay. So consciousness manifests in the human experience. Okay, experience as knowledge, the ability to know what I know and to know what I do not know. Okay, this is reflected chit, reflected consciousness, which it refers here to knowledge. This knowledge, which is something related to the Jiva Atma, is there due to the grace of consciousness. Okay, thus, bhati, non associated with knowledge, associated with consciousness. Everything is associated with Satchit. There is no existence and there is no knower. The Jivatma, there is no knower without conscious existence, Satchit. The Jivan must exist in order to know the world. So it begins, maybe we say with Sat, but Sat is just the other side of Chit, as two sides of the same coin. So Sat Chit is all the time together and enjoying the nature, its nature as limitlessness. And then we go into this third aspect, which is interesting, Priyam. Priyam is dear. He says, within our experience, we experience Sat, Chit, and dearness. Everything is associated with dearness. Everything is an object of my or someone else liking. So everything that's created is created to produce what? Attraction or repulsion, love or hate, desire or aversion. Everything is there for the sake of the Jiva Atma experiencing the world and say, oh, no, I don't care for this one. Oh, I care for this. Oh, I care big time for this one. And when we care big time for something, what happens? Trouble, unless this something is the teachings of the Upanishads, which is going to free us from attachment to our likes and dislikes. In the beginning, you're going to be attached to the scripture. Yes, but this is a good attachment. This is a good like, which is going to free you even from the attraction or like or towards the scripture. Objects are liked by me in two different ways. I like what I like, and I like to remove certain things. So when they come, when I like, but then very soon I want to remove that, and then I like when they go. So it's the same concept. It is attraction and repulsion. So if something goes against our vasana load, we want to remove it. Why? Because intuitively we want to be in a situation of clear mind, free of fears and attractions and distress and conflicts, So we want to keep the mind clear, the mind clean. So, and we know that the only way is by the means of this knowledge, okay, that we can neutralize the attractions and this magnet force of attraction, the repulsion towards objects of experience. To some people, it will give happiness, and some people are not going to get happiness with the presence of something, but once it goes, every object associated with like or dislike, even disliked objects, I like da. Okay, liking is associated with ananda. Okay, so that's the dearness. The like is associated with ananda. What is the meaning of this? Oh, I like it. It means like, oh, now I'm really satisfied. Now I'm satisfied, and I can only be satisfied when I'm temporarily free of desires and fears, attractions and repulsions. Otherwise, the mind is disturbed and I don't feel satisfied. I feel satisfied in this moment because my like was met, or my dislike was met, in the sense that somehow they could be removed, and then my mind rests. So I don't have that trouble anymore with the neighbor, for example. Oh, thanks God. Now I experience what? Ananda, a sense of peace, satisfaction, okay? Liking, therefore, is associated with Ananda. Priya Rupa means Ananda Svarupa, a natureza Ananda, which is the same natureza, nature, means Ananda Svarupa, Ananda nature. Everything in the creation has Satchit and Ananda, as we know, okay? So the objects are created by Ananda, which is this whole full and complete nature of Brahman, okay? But it does not mean much, okay? When we talk in terms of objects, you say objects are whole, full, and complete. It's not a much of a relevant concept because objects cannot realize their fullness. Only the Jiva Atmas need to realize the fullness because it's the only way to remove this negative experience that we have about the world, okay? We need to realize our Ananda nature and see that everything in the world is value neutral. It's just a trick to allow the individual soul to learn, and until it somehow it sees that everything is Satchitananda, although the isness of the world is not experienced Ananda because the world was projected for the Jiva Atma fundamentally, okay? And then the last two is the Nama, is everything is associated with a name, but how so? When the Jiva Atma comes into play, the experience knowing entity comes into the stage of interaction with Jagata, and then it begins giving names to forms and discovering the qualities and attributes and purpose of different objects. So, and then everything is going to be given, labeled by the Jiva Atma with a name. And of course, it's going to refer to certain forms because the forms is that which is going to distinguish one object to another, okay? And not only the shape that limits the object, but every rupan, every form is going to be seen from the property or attributes or qualities angle as well. Oh, this is good for this is good for that. So we're going to go about creating, giving names to forms according to their shapes and the properties, qualities, even if the quality is just the quality of a beautiful flower, okay, that bless my eyes, for example, that illumine my eyes. I say, wow, look at this, okay? So this is, I don't need to be a scientist to understand the anatomy of that flower, but there is a property of beauty in a flower that can be hardly enjoyed, fullness of the flower. Therefore, all our experience have Satchitananda. Namarupa, a wise person is the one who knows that the first three belong to Brahman, Satchitananda, and the last two belong to the world. So this is a beautiful sentence. A wise person is the one that knows, who knows that the first three, the three aspects of our human experience, okay, belongs to my true nature, belongs to Brahman, okay? Everything is this Satchitananda. And the name and forms belongs to Maya, Ishvara, Jiva. Jiva is there working together with Ishvara to attribute qualities and names to all kinds of configurations put together by Maya, Ishvara. So this is it. And then the next class we will carry on from another summary of this one. I read a little bit, and there are some nice things here that we can explore before we move into the verse 21st. But unfortunately, or fortunately, we run out of time, and we leave it for next week. Are you with me? I see everybody frozen here. Have you heard me? Okie dokie. Okay. So we meet again this, today is Thursday. We meet again Monday with Panchadasi. Ishwara willing, of course. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Arrivederci, namaste, goodbye. I'm not going to try anymore the Spanish way because I always mess it up.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Okay.
Hasta luego.
Namaste.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.